everybody! Welcome to the F Your Fears podcast. Today we're going to learn about the heiresses of the past. Do not forget to like and subscribe or you'll never see me again. Don't make this a one-night stand. Let's make this a long-time thing. Come on, baby. Like, subscribe. Let's learn! So I'm a sucker for a landing page. Yes. If you don't know what that is, you ever have those moments where you're on Instagram and you're scrolling and it says sponsored ad? Yeah, if it's something that's tickling my fancy, you best believe I'm gonna click on it. And I'm gonna end up on this specific page where I have to put my email address and then they send me some sort of little like free workbook. And then I either like sign up for classes with them or I just start following them and like really love them. Anyway, so I was on a couple days ago and I saw Kara Loewentheil. She's a JD, which I just looked that up because I had no idea what it was. So basically she has her master's in business. And she is also a master certified coach. So what she does is she goes straight up with science of how to improve your confidence, straight up just using science. So it's not like improving your confidence by I'm beautiful, I am enough. It's taking the mantras and like kind of putting the mantras to the side and just letting science come into play. Okay. So Kara Loewentheil, you'll see her info down here, down below. Please go check her out. I think that she's just like super badass, really awesome. So basically it's where you are telling your brain something is a fact because it's a fact. So you know how like if you wake up in the morning and you're just feeling really gross and like let's say you look at your stomach and you're like, my stomach's disgusting. And that's your current thought. You know how sometimes we flip the script and we're like, we go to the other extreme and we're like, you know what? My stomach's not disgusting. My stomach's perfect. And so we grandiose it. We make it like better than anything. That's kind of like how we function as a society. It's like one thing or the other. What if there's that middle ground? What if there's a neutral thought? What if it's just a fact? My stomach is a human stomach. That takes the weight off. Ha pun intended. But it takes that degree of an absolute of like, oh, it has to be perfect. It has to be this, it has to be that. What if it just is? And by functioning in that realm of things just being facts, it allows us to be able to embrace who we actually are and build our confidence of, well, yes, this is how it is. This is my human stomach on my human body. I am not defined by what my stomach is. I'm defined by who I am as a person. So it kind of takes that added pressure on. So go ahead and do it for yourself. Do it right now. So go ahead and list one thing that you don't like about yourself. Now, flip it. Make it extreme. Just totally extreme. Okay. Fucking dog barking. Now, just go ahead and make it as an absolute. You can't deny it to be a neutral truth, a neutral thought. Did you get one? Okay. So instead of going to those moments where you're looking for this like absolute affirmation, what if we just go to like neutral thoughts instead? So a neutral thought is going to be a thought that you already believe to be true. So it's already measured pretty high and it's just a natural belief of something that is in the world. So you don't need to put any extra weight on it, right? Kara Loewentheil, y'all, go ahead and check her out. But let's talk about who's on the show. Let's find out. Who's on the show? Today on the podcast, we're going to talk to the woman who created As the Money Burns, Burns, Burns. As the Money Burns podcast, Miss Nicki Woodard. Nicki, welcome to the show.
Hello. Hi, Ashley.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
Good. It's a day. It's election day. We're not going to go into politics, but it's election day.
Thank God. Yeah.
So there's like the in the air, you know, there's that thing. But we'll glide on over that because by the time you guys see this, the election will be done and you know, other things will be happening. But more importantly, we're here to talk about Nicki. Nicki, what's going on?
Well, this year I launched my first podcast, which is As the Money Burns, which is a history podcast, about 20 minutes in length. and it covers very thoroughly the lives of actual heirs and heiresses to America's most greatest fortunes during the Great Depression. And so it starts following a group of teens and the adults around them, and then just all the craziness that breaks out with having too much money or losing money in the worst economic history of the last century.
Oh my God. Oh my God. So I guess my first question is, how is that relevant to now?
Well, the thing is first of all, Great Depressions actually cyclically happen every 75 years. So we are technically a little overdue for our own. There was a hint that was going to happen in 2008, but it didn't. Didn't happen in a way that usually, like, there has to be a bottoming out of a large group of people, and then we have a bunch of fail safes because of the original Great Depression to prevent that. But then we're still kind of on the verge. And if you go back chronologically, like our Great Depression, there's always a panic every 30 years, which is a mini recession compared to the Great Depression. There's one every 15 years. So if we go 75 years back from 1929, which last week was October 29th, was the 91st anniversary of the Wall Street crash. If you go 75 years before that, we have the Civil War. 75 years before that, you have the American Revolution and the French Revolution. And usually, like, even pre, like, the economic situation we have famines, we have wars, and they cyclically follow around a 75-year, give or take a couple of years, pattern. So it's one that we'll always come back to. And if you live, into your 70s, 80s, which is now the estimated length of time, you will experience one as a child, as an adult, maybe twice, depending on when it happens. Because, like, our grandparents were the ones that really went through the Great Depressions. My parents were born in the beginning of American involvement in World War II. So they didn't go through that Great Depression, but the 70s was a really bad economic time. So it's relevant now because of what's going on with the pandemic, and especially what could potentially happen after the election.
Definitely.
Is the question we have is about financial security. And so what happens? And the one thing people don't know is the original celebrities that we know today were originally the wealthy. So back in the 1920s, film had just barely begun. And they, at the end of the 1920s, they started instead of giving pseudonyms, they actually started listing people's real names. So this anonymity, this, like, Instagram type of celebrity newsreels would actually be more of the wealthy than actors and actresses. Within 15 years, it's going to change. And then the Hollywood starlets are going to be the big, more celebrity situation. But really in the 1920s, and especially through the Great Depression, it's going to be these people. And so, like, the people I'm following most primarily is Barbara Hutton and Doris Duke. They are both 16 years old when the story starts in 1929. And so they're awkward girls. They don't fit in to the wealthy group, but they're so wealthy they don't fit into a regular group. And they are going to become like the first Instagram celebrities. They're going to be criticized for everything. And so if you think of all the attention the Kardashians get, this is what in Paris Hilton, when she started in real life, this is what they get, but they had no precursor, no way of mentally being prepared for the type of speculation that's going to be put on them, just for having something like a debutante ball.
Wow.
And I think like if I had launched this, I've been trying to get this off as a TV series. So if I had done this 7 years ago, people would have been not as sympathetic towards the girls. But I think with the pandemic, and we feel like with the proms that got canceled and these rites of passages for kids, I think we can relate a little bit more to what these people are, wanting to have this normalcy in their life, and how something like the Great Depression completely throws a different filter on it, and how we can relate to them. And I think it actually works better as a podcast because, I'm sorry, if you see their mansions, it's kind of hard to be sympathetic.
Yeah.
But when you money means if you have a flat tire, you can fix your flat tire and you don't have to worry about food. That's I mean, I had the situation where it's like, I had a flat tire. We didn't have money for food, and, putting on a credit card just becomes more problematic.
Yeah.
My boss at the time, her husband had a flat tire. His one rim and tire was more than my whole car's worth, but it had no effect on them. However, when you have that much money, especially when it comes to the Great Depression, you start worrying more about kidnapping. You have your family members who want to kill you off. You have everyone wanting your money and not wanting you, and trying to figure out how to separate you. So you end up with even more issues around shame and insecurities. And if you think you're unattractive, then you're it's all muddled with, this money and what people want, and people who may like you, but they avoid you because they can't handle the amount of money you have. Like, it's really like what I did when I studied it is it's basically my own broken heart and broken dreams. So this story actually started for me back when I was in high school. I did documentary competitions for something called History Fair. My brother, who was 3 years my senior, started. And my dad had a super-VHS studio that he would do videos for these real estate appraisals, like when they go, it's called eminent domain, when you expand a highway. So like if they go to expand a highway, but they cut off your restaurant business, there's the government is supposed to compensate you money. And so my dad with his video would show how long these driveways would be blocked. Like your parking lot is gone. You have to restructure your kitchen. You interview someone who's like, sometime he would do some people with like mental impairments because of like physical, like a guy fell off a balcony, an improperly reinforced balcony. He fell and hit his head. So my dad would videotape his life in a day to show how much it was a struggle for him, and would help these people get like better awards for the court case. Well, he also was like very open. My dad was always into technology, and so he let me and my brother use this stuff. And so so my brother was in high school, and I was in junior high. I did drama competition. He did the video. When I moved into high school, he wasn't as into it. He was not the best student at the end of his high school career. And then I started doing it, and I went off to film school. But I did the documentary competition every year, went to state. My third year would have been the year I missed nationals. I made third place instead of second. I had a fabulous team I worked with. I was in love with one of my partners who was graduating. I was hoping if we got to DC, maybe we'd have a little romance. Didn't quite work out because one, we lost. I got accepted to this summer program at Brown University, which gave me 2 college credits. It was summer school. Man, it like never did summer school after that again. 2 college courses. Like I had a very high school academic load with APs and all that other stuff. But while I was there, I actually had my first romance. I met a guy who was actually from Turkey. And I got there a day before. He was one of the last people to arrive at our program. I introduced myself. 4 weeks later, we're boyfriend and girlfriend. Before we became boyfriend and girlfriend, we went to Boston for a Saturday because our program arranged these trips, and we went to Newport, Rhode Island. The second time I went to Boston and Newport, then he was my boyfriend. But and Brown University is in Providence, Rhode Island, so it's very close by. So I go back home. What no one knows is my junior year, my brother who had cancer when we were children, it came back.
Oh my God.
And he died the middle of my senior year.
Oh God.
And I lost contact with the boyfriend in Turkey because he went off to Turkey. This is before college started. This is before Facebook, before the internet.
Oh, Nicki. How old were you at this time?
I was 18. He was 21.
Oh my God. That must have been so difficult for you and your family.
Yeah. So, and it's like, and I'm applying for colleges sitting in the room with him in ICU.
Oh my gosh.
So, he dies January of my senior year. I I get into like 2 different schools. I end up going to University of Texas. Life goes on. I end up finding and meeting. I went off to grad school. I studied the Middle East. I've studied history and media my whole life. Worked in Hollywood, worked on sets, worked on the illustrious Sweet Valley High TV show, worked on 2 Knight Rider spinoff, 2 little independent films that I've actually may have seen them both now, like randomly on like cable.
I love the Sweet Valley High show. My friend Danny loves Sweet Valley High. He used to have an Instagram just for Sweet Valley High. Yeah.
3 years ago, my dad finally came to visit me, and or 4 years ago, we ran into one of the twins. And I was Cynthia, and she was like, wait, how do you know I'm not Brittany? I was like, I could always tell you apart. My high school had like 9 different identical twins. Like we were, so like, I learned very quickly, like how to tell twins apart.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been good for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Let me know if my teeth is chattering.
You're great. You're perfect.
So then I work in media. I've worked in animation. I did History Channel when I came back from grad school.
So whenever you were doing like History Channel and all that, like and working in media, what were you doing? Were you doing animation? Were you doing
like when I got out of grad school, within 6 months, I landed a job that did like 100 hours of a year of History Channel. I started in post-production. I've always had a massive technical background. I got promoted to researcher. I've worked in over 40 documentaries as a researcher. I've worked on like in post over 100. I have credits for.
Wow.
I worked on the Theodore Roosevelt special. I worked on a dinosaur special. I worked on 2 haunted histories. It was great, but I wanted to do more and I wanted to do creative. So I moved away from that. I got a temporary job in marketing, like helping different people I knew, like they got me those jobs. I did animation, which I was admin assistant most of my work, trying to find ways to like get into systems and then just realizing it gets blocked, and also trying to build a network that I could then sell my skills. And then hopefully use that to maneuver into other things. I worked in literary management for 5 years. So we worked with writers and directors of, I worked with the director of Devil Wears Prada, 13 Going on 30, one of the showrunners for 30 Rock, a guy who's directed multiple episodes on HBO, including Big Love and 2 Game of Thrones. So, and I got to learn the business really good that way, like, cause my boss really liked breaking out new talent. So I got to see how hard that was. And then also like different, like established talent. I worked with a guy who did the pilot of Criminal Minds and also Ugly Betty. So, and different temperaments, and just like, and also get the history of like things like I know how like they recruited the guy to do Devil Wears Prada, and what finally, got him interested. He's a really great guy, David.
Well, what finally got him interested? You have to tell everyone now.
He just wasn't, he loves the creation of worlds. So he doesn't want to do something that just everybody's done. He wants to know there's a world. And the first couple of scripts were just too whiny and complainy, and he didn't like that. And then finally, when they got a script that was really good, then he finally signed on. And he had past working on, like, a lot of people we worked with was on Sex and the City. So, know a lot of the writers and directors and what they've gone on to, like almost everyone I just named in their career was like worked on Sex and the City, at least at some point.
It feels like there are certain shows, like there are certain shows that like a lot of really good people are on, and then they just kind of go, they like pollinate somewhere else, and then it blooms, and then everyone just kind of knows everyone.
Yeah, there's just certain ones that like, it's just like there's a talent pool. It's like, it's also funny, like you'll watch old TV shows and you're like, all of a sudden you're like, like 90% of the cast became someone you knew. Like you had no idea who they were, like they're in the background, but so when I was working in documentaries, I actually met my ex-husband, who ends up being, and by coincidence, another Turkish guy. By the way, when I was in my master's program, I studied Turkish. just because like I had gotten back in contact with my high school sweetheart. I'm a history person. I'm into dynasties. His name is the name of 3 sultans. So when I was looking at the history, I was like, that's really fascinating. Everybody's done French, British, you know. So that's kind of what, and my friends from high school are from multiple cultures. And I had a lot of friends that were Indian, and there's a Middle Eastern empire that's the one that built the Taj Mahal.
Mm-hmm.
So that kind of like led my master's studies. So when I got out, I like 3 years later, I meet my future husband. So he's with me all the way to the management company. He's with me with animation. He's with me with marketing. When I'm doing documentaries. What I didn't realize when we were together, because I keep my nose clean. My brother's gotten a lot of trouble, even though my brother was sick. He was in a lot of trouble before then. My ex-husband was a secret drug addict. Mm. And all the stuff that wasn't working and all the problems we were having is from hiding this secret. And so my life has fallen apart. I've worked for 5 years in management. It's time for me to move on. I've got to take a risk. And, you know, I came out here to do history and media. I've been passionate about like history since I heard about Pocahontas, media since I found out like, oh, that's not just a special little box that puts you in a parallel world when I'm like 8 years old. And when I realized I could do both, that's just always what I've been doing. Like I said, since high school, really doing it. And then I was just like, I just got to go out and do it. And so I met with a lot of people. I found this article about the summer of 1929 and the events in Newport, Rhode Island. And I kind of remember I was like, oh yeah, there's supposed to be some rich people there. I already knew about Barbara Hutton and Doris Duke, but when I started digging in, it was like, oh, there's that story. And there's these other teens. And they're the same age I was then. And in 2 months, the crash is going to happen and their lives are going to change. Mm-hmm. And as I started digging up everything that is in my life, because of my siblings, because of my experience, just everything I experienced, I see in their stories. And what I'm big about in history is I don't like just telling the same story everyone's told. I especially am interested in how we connect. Like when I was studying the Middle East, it's like, how do they see Europeans? How do Europeans see them? How do we interact? You know, we think of King Henry VIII as this great ruler, and he's actually a little small guy, like on the world stage at that time. But just because of what happened, because of him in the history of England, they rose. But at the time, he was really insignificant. His choices ended up having large consequences. So when I was trying to sell this as a TV show, no one could understand my contribution as a researcher. It's like, it's not, I found a book or 2 or 3 articles. I went and I did my level of research. So I came up with like 2,200 articles, 90% from the time period. I went through 40 different books. I patchworked back this world of people. And people are interested, but history's kind of hard to do. There's all these off and ons. Then this year started, and I just got over a creative block with a show going like, well, what am I going to do? Like, I'm running out of everybody I know that I can pitch to. And I'm going to still have the IP problem no matter what I do with whatever project. And then all of a sudden I was like, wait, a podcast could take care of this. I was doing this weird admin job, and it was like boring the hell out of me. My brain was like mush. So I started listening via YouTube at work, different podcasts, different people talking. And so that gave me like, oh, that, you know, oh, people are talking, like, you know, Malcolm Gladwell, Robert Greene, I'm blinking on his Ryan Holiday, like the way their brains work, and they like little segments and like overarching all these things, like that's how my brain works. But when you try to do the History Channel, it's very linear.
Yeah.
And so it's like, oh wait, I can turn this into a podcast. And when I started looking at it, it's like, well, my history, like, do I do audio drama? Like, how do I set this up? And then I was like, wait, there's no barrier. The only person who's going to tell me no is me. I can make this however I want. I can play to my strengths. I can develop my weaknesses. And I just like, that was before the pandemic. So I was like getting prepped to launch it in June, got all my information in February. Then March 13th, I lost my job. The lockdown begins, and I'm like, I am an idiot if I don't get this launched sooner. I mean, I know the material. I was going to give myself a little more time to learn the new technical stuff, because my dad having a studio, like my whole life, I was like technically savvy, but if I don't need to do it, I don't do it. Like, I'm not like such a gearhead that I'm always involved with it. But I know I can do it when I need to. And so that's like March 13th, I lost my job. So like, that's the one thing I can't relate to. I am not in any way an heiress or have money, but I relate to their emotional journeys. And I think a lot of us can. And I think that's important. And I think, like, especially like when we're talking about the election or anything else, it's like the way we are polarizing and playing these group identity politics, and the way we're dehumanizing other people for just every little slight, we kind of need to stop. And we need to kind of remember everybody's human, and everybody, like, if they have a different perspective, it comes from a source that is valid to them. You don't have to agree with everything, but let's just stop canceling each other. Let's stop being so hateful to things that, sometimes these people like they don't have control, or they don't have a control over everything you think they have control over. And like they're 20-minute little episodes. So one will cover like suicide. It'll cover what happens when you're fighting with your mother. It goes really deep into like a situation and a scenario that these people experience that I think we all can relate to.
Definitely. And where can people find this podcast?
It's everywhere. It's on Apple, it's on Amazon, it's on Google, iHeart, Stitcher, Podchaser, Deezer, pretty much everywhere but the one podcast that takes forever to like validate, Pandora. We'll just call them out on it.
Yeah.
I've tried 3 times. I don't know why they haven't like activated it.
Yeah.
But it's everywhere. And I have a YouTube channel too, because that's like, my parents can use YouTube, their friends, like they're all in their 70s, like, they're passing it along, and they're like super happy, because to get them to go to iTunes to listen to a podcast isn't going to happen.
Oh, I know. I get that.
And I do have a listener consistently in Thailand, and one in Paris, and now one in Geneva.
Awesome.
So it's already international.
Oh, that's great. That's wonderful.
Yeah. And I was recently featured last week on the anniversary of the crash. I was featured in Discover Pod's podcast Spotlight.
Oh, wow.
I also got listed last week in Podchaser's like 30 podcasts to check out.
That's amazing. Congratulations.
Yes. So hopefully I start like, I'm new. So it's like, no one's looking for a podcast on the Great Depression.
Yeah.
No one's looking for a podcast on heiresses. Once they hear about it and once they know what it is, we hope so. So,
Definitely.
and I think that's the other thing is like, you're going to get financial history. You're going to get personal, love triangles, Ponzi schemes, like sweetheart scams, like wills, like, just all sorts of things are going to be in the mix of this. It's not just one-sided. And like, I also tell people, it's like, you think of money as you put it to the side and it accumulates interest. And that's simple. Like you have money or you don't. You don't realize all the emotional stuff that people go through that makes them make the bad decisions that make the money go away. So true. So true. Nicki,
I'm so grateful that you came on the show today and had a chat with me. Thank you so much. Really, thank you. I do have another question though. Sure. So the show's based on fear. Like we talk about fear here a lot on the show. And one question I always like to ask everyone, whenever you feel fear start to creep into your own life, what do you do to combat that?
It depends on what the kind of fear it is. So like financial fear is the one that I struggle with more, but I've lived it. So it's not crippling in one way because I've made choices to take the risk. I didn't want the choices of trying to have a safe life and then be unhappy, because I was so unhappy with my parents' divorce and my brother was getting into a lot of trouble and the cancer. So I was like, I want to go out and grab things. When it comes to like career, I'm usually like the one who encourages all my friends to take the risk, so that I grew up with a father that just was his own person. Like, I mean, he does wacky stuff. Sometimes he succeeds, sometimes he doesn't, but it kind of teaches you, like, when you succeed, it's great. So try for it. I don't come from a family that's always like, you have to be careful. They're like, do it. And so like, once I can figure it out, like with the podcast, like it was something that never occurred to me. Mm-hmm. And then it is kind of frightening, because it's like, I have to do audio engineering and mixing. That is not my skill set.
Yeah, I hear you.
Not have a good ear. So, I mean, I'm picky enough, but I'm in over my head half the times. If something technical is wrong, I'm like, I just don't know. So and it's like, I'm watching other people in their life. And the one thing I would want to tell people is fear. It's valid to have it. It's valid to feel it, but don't let it control you. Don't let it stop you from putting your life back together. Don't let it stop you from taking the risk that you're going to wish you had 20 years from now. A lot of fear comes with shame, and the shame, you may be embarrassed briefly because you do something, but it's never going to hurt you as much as not believing in yourself. Mm-hmm. And that was the thing for me, especially after my marriage fell apart, after the job ended, was I have to go for what I want. I can't live by somebody else's decisions about me that have nothing to do with how I'm geared or what I want. And it's frightening. I spent 7 years trying to make this a TV show. You get scared, like, like, I can't be Shonda Rhimes. I won't get to sell this show as the writer. Like, I'm not a strong, like, I can't write the pilot. And everybody's gonna tell you no, or, like, oh, pat on the head, here's a couple, like, $100 or a couple $1,000, now go away. I was like, no, this show's good. It's going to be good because of how I can help interpret this. It's going to be good because of these things. And I'm not going to let this succeed without me. And I don't really think it can succeed the way I want it to succeed. Mm-hmm. What I think is purposeful about it without me. Because I have the life experience and the knowledge. When I see one sentence and says her mother doesn't like her, but she loves her other brother, her brother, like, I understand what that means. And, different writers they'll understand one part of it, but they may not understand all of it, or why I would want to portray it this way. And a lot of it was like a lot of self-doubt. And I know, like, part of this podcast is based on the artist way. My last year after losing, I decided to do another documentary just to tell myself I'll never give up. And this is after my brother died. It was like hell that year, just trying to, like, finish high school. My teacher came up to me and asked me to have a freshman join my group. What she didn't know is the freshman she asked was a girl I went to private school with. So I've known this girl since she was in kindergarten.
Oh, wow.
From a distance. She was at church. She was in church with me too. So I kind of have, like, this de facto distance, like, protective older sister thing over her. So I was like, yeah, like, she's gonna, bring her into my group. I had no idea what was going on in her personal life. Too much was going on in mine. When I go off to college, we write to each other a couple of times. She ends up moving to a different school. We lose contact. In the middle of developing the TV series, she reached out to me wanting to get back in contact.
Oh, wow.
And it was, the irony is one of her best friends from growing up is my best friend's cousin. Mm-hmm. And I go to my best friend's aunt's house every Christmas and catch up with the family. Like, when I'm back in Texas, I go and see my best friend's family too. We were very close. And we were talking about this girl. And so then like 3-4 months later, she reaches out to me, and that's when I learned some more about her private life, like what was going on in her, like her freshman year of high school. So we start talking and all this stuff. And she's like, I just always thought you were strong. And I remember you going through everything. And I was like, oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't know what you were going through. I didn't have the bandwidth to like take on other problems. But she was like, no, because you were fearless and you were going. She was like, that was the great model. And she's the one who, and I was telling her, I was like, oh, I'm trying to get this TV series off the ground and all my doubts. And she goes, Nicki, because she's a journalist and a media teacher. Now she's a counselor. And she goes, Nicki, we all go through this, like that, your roadblocks, your fears, that is part of the artistic process. That doesn't mean you're not creative. It means you are. And so she pointed me to Artist Way. And that was in the middle of it. That's what kind of empowered me to go, no. Stay true to yourself. Keep going. Don't let that fear stop you from doing. And now I still need to find an audience, but I'm so happy. Like, I'm so happy. I'm finally, like, I was driving people crazy because I talk about these people like they're in my life. Like, oh, blah, 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 blah. Like, Barbara Hutton, this happened and this happened. So now I get it out in the podcast, and I don't know what to do if I'm not doing this.
Yeah.
So, and everything, like all my fears of what I've gone through in life, like the fear of losing my brother, I knew at 8 when he had cancer. I didn't understand at 4 and 6. I knew he was sick. I didn't understand what cancer was. I found out later, is like, I knew these terms like tumor, and I knew terms related to cancer, but I didn't understand. I didn't know what cancer was. And then when I learned it, and then as I grew up, it's like, oh, that explains things. And then it came back. So, I'm putting that all into the podcast. And that's the thing is it's not if you go and you do a biography and you said, oh, like you run over like, oh, she was married to this guy, and it's like 3 sentences long or 2 paragraphs. It's like, no, let's explain how she fell in love with him, the story no one knows, what this real dynamic is. I won't do it. Barbara Hutton was married 7 times. I can't do that for every marriage of hers, but so much of your life is marked by your adolescence and your early adulthood. And then the fears that set in, the choices you make, the choices you're trying to correct. So I'm really like trying to explore that deeply in a way we can all connect to.
Well, thank you for connecting people together. We appreciate it. And Nicki, thank you so much for being here. I really, really appreciate it.
Yeah, well, I mean, I love the idea of your fears. Like, I mean, when I heard that, I was like, yeah.
Oh, thank you.
Go for it. We all need it. And then and especially when you're creative, you're sensitive. Like you feel things. You like that is who you are. And to try to be like, one of the things I had to do in between was learn accounting. I was miserable.
Yeah. Like,
yeah, I can do it, but I'm never going to thrive at it. I'm never going to thrive mentally in it. And I see so many people shut down. I see so many people get locked in. And I have my own like weaknesses, like personal relationships are still like confusing to me. But the only thing is I know is I can't give up. Yeah. Because I want more in life, and I don't get it if I just stay in my cave.
Well, amen to that. Amen to that. All right, everybody. We'll see you later.
Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I love you. Bye-bye.